This comparative study asserts that we can gather a greater understanding of a single auteur, in this case, Fritz Lang, by way looking to his work in two different genres and competing film movements. Fritz Lang's 1931 film, M, was a revolutionary work that introduced the first serial killer movie, which captivates audiences through thrilling suspense and drama. Following the influences of German Expressionism and film noir, even through only black and white footage, amazing visual and sound techniques combine to convey a mysterious narration that leaves the audience contemplating every next move. M is set in the background of the Weimar Republic in Germany and reflects a paranoid society, especially about the obsession with serial killers. Coincidentally, this film was created in succession to the rise of the Nazi Party. In the context of M, described by film analyst Kino Lorber, German Expressionism expresses interior realities via exterior realities and emotionalism, rather than objectivity or realism. The world that characters inhabit in a German Expressionism film is full of exaggerated landscapes and environments of abstract shapes, angles, shadows, and distorted sets. The building architecture is off-kilter, jagged, and many of the props seem to be geometrically off-balance. This unusual visual look is intentional, of course, to give the viewer a feeling of inner emotional reality rather than realism. M is a paragon of German Expressionist work following the description of those characteristics. A different Lang film, Scarlet Street, created in 1945, is set in a post-World War II background in American society. This film delineates the middle-class struggle of Americans with underlying themes of lust and greed for money. Pertaining to the genre film noir, this film is permeated with ambiguity, violent death, and of course the dubious femme fatale, showcased by the character Kitty. Her seductive portrayal in juxtaposition to other characters emphasizes her dubious nature and the uncertainty of the film. Lang's auteur style, his camera stylo, is apparent through his use of framing, lighting, and musical cues apparent across both films. All these elements combine in order to create masterful creations of suspense and thrill revolving around an imperfect society. For example, in this scene, Lang uses visual and musical cues in order to illustrate Chris's inability to grasp reality and to reflect his inner romanticism. This is also a sign of his inability to understand Kitty's sole motive, the only true reality of the film, money and power. The pleasant bird singing, the slow wide shot lowering onto the couple through the tree branches, all sets up a scene as if in a dream. A true reflection of the fantasy that Chris wants to live.
I couldn't take anything from you, Chris.
Lang's use of irony is many times subtle and not apparent until later on, after courses of events have transpired. His use of irony throughout both films adds a little bit of black comedy, although still sending an underlying message of a corrupt society. Lang's consistent thematic concepts establish his interior meaning, a signature to his auteur style. In Scarlet Letter, the drive for money and lust ultimately meets an ironic ending, as Chris is painting self an absolute fortune, but neither party initially involved reaped the benefits.
$10,000. I shouldn't think you'd mind,
In M, the concluding scenes yield major social commentary while portraying irony as well. Hans Beckert's trial is hugely ironic considering other criminals are alienating and convicting only one notorious criminal. Hans pleads for a failed trial and to be handed to the police, even though earlier he refused to give himself up and is condemning the action he is sought after for, cold-blooded murder. Hans' pleading dialogue and close-ups of his actions and expressions overlapped by the laughing of the crowd reflects society's inability to sympathize and understand psychological issues while emphasizing Hans' inner chaos. Similar across both films is the psychological struggle of two protagonists. This inner conflict later translates to a conflict with society as well.
Manchmal ist mir, als ob ich selber hinter mir herliefe. Ich will davon.
start that again.
Scarlet Street has apparent visual motifs, such as Johnny's hat. The hat represents the everlasting presence and impact of Johnny, which Chris is stupidly unaware of until being blatantly exposed to the truth, crashing in on Kitty and Johnny elope at the time of the record breaking. Chris is shown as being stupidly obedient to the woes of Kitty, while being unable to face the harsh realities of his life.
Glad to know you, Mr.
Kitty's duplicity is ever present and her facial expressions constantly change, simply relying on if Chris can see her or not. The repetitiveness of elements in the film, such as the paintings or Johnny's hat or phrases mouthed by Kitty, are all a part of Lang's style to create suspense and uncertainty towards the end of the film. Both films are created around a sense of ambiguity. Frequently, scenes are cut in transition with time elapsing without concrete evidence as to what has happened in the meantime, or how much time exactly has elapsed. In M, auditory motifs are used to create eerie and uncanny moods recognizable to the audience whenever present, such as the unnerving whistle of the serial killer. The playing of the spooky music always coincides with the evil doings of Hans Beckert and is emphasized with visual techniques, such as consuming his figure in shadows and concealing him behind other objects. M, in contrast to Scarlet Street, utilized more a lack of sound at times in order to convey scary settings and occurrences, allowing the silence to speak for itself and drag out the drama. Consistent in Lang's films is the sensation of the hidden observer. Lang puts the observer in the shadows, lurking in the dark, often away from the characters of the film, heightening an ominous mood. All the action unfolds in front of the audience from a position of secrecy, unlike the different parties in the film who stay ignorant to each other and struggle to compete with one another. Tom Gunning explains in his analysis of M, the film's obsession with surveillance also addresses the deep-seating fear of an expanding urban population. Hans Beckert's ease in concealing himself with everyone is a worrying effect, especially with historical contexts such as Berlin doubling in size by the end of the decade. M is a cultural and social reflection of the deep anxieties instilled in the German population. While M focuses more on the historical context, one that plagued the German people through times of economic and political crisis, Scarlet Street is set in a more superficially prosperous society of the United States. Shown here is the position of the hidden observer in the execution of Johnny. The shot taken from a distant angle is not explicitly showing the electrocution, but the use of a spooky, wavering light helps in serving as a hint that Johnny served his punishment. The door shutting is part of the ellipses that Lang utilizes for the audience to fill in the gap of the narration, and also to transition into the now dark mind of Chris as he is haunted by his own conscience. It is important to notice that Scarlet Street does not reveal its thriller climax and mentally troubled killer protagonist until the very end of the film, whereas M commences as a dark and suspenseful movie from the exposition, and Hans Beckert, the troubled killer, is known from the beginning. According to theorist Andrew Saris, being an auteur means accomplishing a trademark technique, personal style, and interior meaning. Franz Lang achieves these marks and shows running similarities in his personal style even across films of different movements such as M and Scarlet Street. Lang leaves the ending of each film with no real reassurance for the audience, but rather a theme that the corruption and vices of society will continue. Such as in Scarlet Street, a feeble justice system and human selfishness is inevitable. In M, even getting rid of one criminal does not eliminate all the evil and the rest of the criminals of society. Lang shows the ugly and undesirable side of society, and does so by employing two twin plots that go on separately, but eventually merge at the end.
Im Namen des Volkes.
Davon werden unsere Kinder auch nicht wieder lebendig. Man muss ihm noch besser auf die Kinder achten.